I'm live streaming right now. I love you, Bird. All right. Now I'm with Stuart. I'm with Stuart, dude. We're talking about the wheat fields. All right. Whoa. All right. I think we're all there. Oh, dude, it's not doing the one view. Gallery, speaker, it should be side by side. Is it immersive? No. Huh. Let's see. There we go. All right, we're in. How you doing, Stuart?
Pretty good. Yeah, the world continues to roll in an interesting direction.
Yep.
But yeah, definitely still here.
Yeah, it's the hustle. What do you see?
Problems on all horizons.
You see problems? I see solutions.
I definitely don't see any of those.
You don't? What problems do you see?
I just spoke with Jason Burmus for an hour. That'll be coming out tomorrow. But
Okay.
One of the big things that we spoke about there was the way that the alternative media world has fallen back into the left-right trap, the Republican versus Democrat trap, and how that's really leading people astray and down roads that are not going to lead to solutions. Well, actually, that was one solution I came up with. It was you have to do a test. Every time someone tells you they have a solution, the test is, does this solution lead back to the Democrats or the Republicans? And if it does, it's not the solution. You need to start over from scratch.
Pretty much. Who's the alternative media? That's my curious question.
I think it's almost what's become the mainstream alternative media now, really. I think.
Okay. All right. What's the mainstream alternative media?
Well,
I just want to see where I'm at on that spectrum right now.
I don't know. I don't know where you are at on that spectrum.
No, I'm just curious. Like, who are you referring to as the mainstream? And I'll tell you who I'm listening to or checking in with.
So I think your Alex Jones's InfoWars, that whole crowd and the like, let's say, have slowly but surely drifted further and further just back into, well, let's support the Republicans.
Okay, fair enough. Those are yeah, it's pretty corporate. No, I'm over on the I'm like more on the gray zone, redacted, Jimmy Dore.
I've honestly never checked in with these guys. I watch very few channels at this point. I watch foreign media reports, so British media, German media, so they're mainstream really, but it's not tied up with the partisan left-right agenda, which is a good thing. In terms of the alternative, I used to check in a few different places, but yeah, mostly they seem to have gone off the rails. But the Gray Zone, you say, is a good one.
Gray Zone with Max Blumenthal and Aaron Mate. They do some pretty good reporting. And then, I always like Jimmy Dore's analysis, but he's calling the bluff on it all. And then there's and I'm pretty sure these dudes are backed by the CIA or some, but as Redacted's doing pretty good coverage on the thing. They're always having which I find interesting. They always have McGregor and Ritter on there, which I find to be suspect, but
yeah, this has also been a big problem with alternative media over the last few months, in terms of who are they making into their new idols. And
well, I mean, I would argue that these guys are that kind of cadre is not, you look at who kind of the new mainstream media, it is this sort of the what is it? It's not the it's the Rising, it's that one with Sagar and what's her face and the Tim Pools and that kind of stuff, which is the sort of left centrist, little bit over, even more to the left kind of thing, and then you have your standard lefties, which are already polarized. But I find that the test of it all that I've found is Palestine. Is that seems to be the one thing where if you see where they're at with Palestine, and if they're mentioning it, and if they're not, they're into the paradigm pushing.
I saw also on Twitter, Glenn Greenwald was trying to say, how often have AOC and Bernie tweeted about Julian Assange?
I like Glenn. I think Glenn's pretty solid, but he's running with that same thing. He's running with that whole cadre of people too. So, and then there's the you can get into one guy there's one guy that I sent you his links who's reporting out of the Ukraine. It's fine, very interesting. But what's your we're coming up on the 1 year 1 year hoorah of the hustle, dude. The hustle is in full effect, man. So what do you think?
If we're not careful, if it's not already, this is going to be the new forever war. This is going to be the new Iraq or the new Afghanistan. That's what this is now going to be. We thought we'd just gotten away from both of those conflicts. We thought the world may be trending in a different direction, maybe away from militarism. Well, we're back in at full speed ahead.
Well, I don't know, man. I think we're I see it a little bit more BlackRockish. I think they've reached their point of diminishing returns, and it's time for the rubbleization to stop and the new infrastructure to be put back in. And you have Zelensky speaking, his whole what is he, how is he labeling it the other week, was the new Ukraine, come join us, Ukraine. And he's got the backing of BlackRock, and there's money to be made, man. That rubble gets reformed. And I thought that was, one of those interesting things. I remember, because I don't really dig into it that much, because I see it for what it is. Like it's just a hustle. So but I remember when I was still checking it out a little bit, you were seeing, what's his face, Patrick Lancaster was interviewing people on the streets of Mariupol, and there was cranes in the background building stuff already. So I think it's obvious, or maybe it's not. I don't know, that this is again of another just money hustle on the backs of the world population.
Yeah, there's definitely no dispute in that part. The estimates I'm seeing right now are anywhere from 100 to 300,000 dead on each side. So that's not combined, on each side. So you could be looking around 500,000 dead right now. And they're the numbers for soldiers. This isn't including civilians. I don't think we even have anything that could be considered an accurate tally of how many civilians are dead here. But yeah, as you mentioned, does the stock price of Lockheed Martin or Raytheon care about how many bodies are piled up?
No.
Absolutely not. It just sees the bottom line going ever higher, going deeper and deeper into the black with the profits, and things are looking on the up for the military-industrial complex as a result of this.
Well, I think it's interesting. The real winner on this one's been Russia, man. Like,
in what respect?
I think that they've actually proven that I'll go back to the original thing I said. They were more self-sufficient than I think was anticipated, man. They didn't need the West. Like, they don't. Their economy's coming back full swing. They're doing fine.
Yeah, and the best illustration of that, you probably haven't seen this, but Britain's economy is currently doing worse than Russia's economy, and is on track to do far worse for the rest of this year.
Yeah, all of the ones who have lined up on it, because it's a very interesting gambit they tried to play, right? Like they tried to play in a world where Russia, China, and India
all exist in the same geographic space, relatively speaking. And India and China, with 1 billion people apiece, they are growing and have been growing, and now they have massive middle classes, and they're in a better position than ever before to offer some resistance to the Western way of doing things.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at the number of African countries that want to sign up for BRICS is, what, six more. I mean, BRICS is on the move, and all of the fear mongering, it didn't get. It's very interesting when you look at it as all the. I mean, we were supposed to have run out of wheat by now.
Also on the BRICS point, BRICS was basically dead until this happened. That had completely fallen off the radar. All of these countries were starting to go in different directions, but yeah, now as an alternative potential political and economic structure, seemingly making somewhat of a comeback.
Well, it's interesting. So, like, the one thing I've been noticing on the hype that they're pushing is, the new offensive. There's going to be the new offensive, which I've been hearing that now for 3 months. It's when it gets when the ground gets cold enough, there's going to be a new offensive, and then you really kind of look at what's going on there. Is I mean, I'm going to go back to my like, I think the real tell on the whole thing, and I know you're going to shake your head, but I think the proof is now available. There are no nukes. Because I'll make an argument for it as this, because I've watched it reveal itself pretty heavily in the last month, right? You had NATO nations shoveling up more arms, sending up the tanks, getting ready, wanting to do the airplanes, doing this whole thing. Meanwhile, Russia's not sweating it on any level, dude, because they have actually hardened their military, as they've learned. I think we've underestimated Russia's, not we, but the Western world's underestimated Russia's ability to absorb chaos and the fact that, like, when you really get into the heart of Russia, I don't think it's any different than when you get into the nitty gritty of America. Like, yeah, let's screw these dudes. Let's go. And I think you've got old Russia, dependent, like self-sufficient Russia going, we ain't worried about nothing, dude. You have living population that goes back to Stalin, dude. Like, what are they worried about, And all of these Khrushchevs and the whole fall of the Soviet Empire and the whole thing, and like they're still standing. And I think they know that there's no nukes either, or they would have used them by now. That's my basic premise: is it would have been used. And the West does not behave as anybody who seems slightly nervous about it. They came out, it was the big puff, 3 months ago, and then you had the 90 seconds till midnight hype. But I don't see any way that the West is operating in the slightest as if there's a threat of annihilation on the other side of the wheat fields. I mean, do you see it? I don't.
Yeah, so they started out with, we don't want to send this weapon because it might lead to escalation, and then they end up sending it. So they do that about 5 times in a row with long-range missiles, long-range rockets, armored personnel carriers, tanks, jets, different types of shoulder-launched missile systems, but they eventually do end up turning it all over. So what you can see is that each of those steps are leading along a ladder, and they're essentially probing what will the Russians or won't the Russians do if we send this. So this whole thing from the Western side of things, there will be mass war game planners in the Pentagon going through it. Well, if we send this and we send it there and we have the Ukrainians launch it here, what do they do next? They're testing everything they possibly can for a response. So there's two answers, I guess, to the question, which would be, well, the first one is, well, they've tested the response and they never get anything that looks like it's going to lead to the big red button, so they just keep going ahead. Or the Russians, they might believe the Russians have reached a conclusion that even if you were to launch at this point, what would it actually achieve? Would it actually do anything to significantly alter the battlefield? I mean, aside from dropping a nuke on Kiev, I don't know what a small tactical weapon is going to do for you at this point. They're in a stalemate. So dropping a big bomb really isn't going to do much except make the stalemate even worse as a result of the environmental radioactive impact that would have. So they may have just reached the conclusion that this isn't going to go anywhere if we go down this path. Or if we do it, we don't know what the consequences of it are going to be. The fear of, that's probably the third answer. The fear of the unknown in this is huge, because you got to think this hasn't been done since the end of World War II. There's the idea in academic writing on this issue of the nuclear taboo. And it's the idea that essentially if some nation were to use a nuclear weapon, they would instantly become the international pariah. Hitler on steroids is what the nation would be cast as, right? Regardless of why they used it. Therefore, no nation, however evil it may be, would ever use a nuclear weapon. And it's possible that that is exactly what would happen to Russia. You already saw China.
Aren't they already that? They are the international pariah.
I mean, not to that level. And I don't think any of us even really understand what would happen in the world if this happened. And again, we were just talking about this an hour ago on the other interview that I did. But the idea of if something like this happened, even if it was a dirty bomb, for instance, some radiological device, you would see 9/11, the response to 9/11, plus the response to COVID times probably about 10. I think our entire social and political structure would change immediately, almost overnight. You're looking at the complete change in socio-political realities, even if something happened way far away, because it all of a sudden opens a Pandora's box. Well, if we can use it here, why can't we use it there? If they use it, can we use it back against them? And what the other thing I was going to say was, at the end of last year, when this became a stalemate, as it's currently been for like the last 4 months, the Chinese were even starting to turn their back slightly to the invasion itself and make some suggestions, public suggestions that I think they said something like diplomacy is the only real way to conduct international relations. So they didn't say anything directly, right? But they just hint that what's going on here, while we were originally kind of hands off, neutral, they were starting to turn against it by making those sorts of statements. Well, if they're already doing that because you're in a stalemate, imagine what happens if they drop a nuke of any scale. It's nobody knows what would happen. This is what the I don't know if I have that book up here.
But okay, I guess what I guess where I roll that, like, I'll bet the world there's no nukes, dude. I bet my life on it. What I see is this is the ruse of the military industrial complex. Is they have the academic thinkers stuck in the paradigm that this thing exists, when at this stage of the game, I don't see any proof that it does. You see, the West has come out with no holds bar rhetoric. I mean, you have lunatics in Germany, that the defense chick in Germany going, "Which war?" You have Spain joining in, you have Portugal joining in, you have You have them saying we're going to take back. You have Zelensky saying we're going to take back the Crimea, which is a no-go zone. You have all of this going on, and so if you're that we've crossed that line, right? The big hustle 6 months ago was the existential threat. Russia faces an existential threat. When they feel that threat, then it's all holds bar off and the whole thing, and they have it. Like the West has, in no uncertain terms, said we are not negotiating this with you. We're and I don't see that negotiating place coming from an understanding that this is a possibility, because the whole premise of the possibility is that no one would do it. And I go, well, why wouldn't you at this point? Like, why wouldn't you at this point put the West on your heels? If I'm sitting there on the other side, I'm like, it's yesterday. I would have nuked yesterday. I would have wiped London off the map. I would have wiped one of these cities off the map and been like, dude, it's done. Game over. Go have your little like identity crisis, figure it all out. We have it. We're going to use it. I mean, because you go back to Oppenheimer, right? And a lot of these early proponents of it, they were very much like, we need to nuke them all now before the cat gets out of the bag. But they didn't, right? Why didn't they? Because there wasn't anything there. I still don't. I mean, I've read enough about Hiroshima. It was a giant science experiment. What it was, I don't know. But I don't see. I think that's where they've got people. I think that's where they got academia tricked, because the supposed peace movement doesn't see it as a threat either. The peace movement isn't worried about it either. And that's coming from the control grid too, you know. Where's Martin Sheen and the plowshares? They ain't worried about it. You know, what's Martin Sheen got to lose in 2023? Mr. Anti-nuke guy. We're the anti-nukers. They're nowhere to be found. And I think the reason why is there aren't any. I know it sounds crazy, dude, but
the problem is, though, when you make this line of argument, there's no conversation to be had. I mean, what can I even say to this? And what would someone who's anti-war also say to this?
Well, that's what I'm saying is what if that's what's perpetuating the war? Is the belief that we are on this tightrope of 90 seconds to midnight and the end is nigh, and this whole thing allows us to be in this low scale conflict. So compared to nuclear Armageddon, tactical tank warfare is low scale warfare, right? Compared to biological warfare, it's low scale warfare, right? What, 500,000 people? We lost that many with the COOF supposedly in our own country, right? Like, that was a bioweapon, the whole thing. So what I'm saying is, I'm saying, what would it look like if you were promoting the peace movement and your premise about the control grid of the military industrial complex from a position that the one thing they hold over all their head they might not have? It's a bluff. Then where would you guide your academic strategy towards them at? On a hypothetical, let's say it's just a hypothetical for you. Like, have you explored that avenue of what would these entities look like without this mythical thing, or this? Let's say it's the super game ender thing. What does the argument look like then if it's not there?
I mean, I honestly don't know how to respond to the question.
Because it's a good question, because, right, like,
I'd say, actually, I would argue no, that it's not a good question. Because if you're coming at it from these completely diametrically opposed angles on what reality is, that you can't have a conversation.
No, I'm not suggesting that it shifts reality. I'm saying, so you had, for example, just the other day, you had a supposed weather, call it a weather balloon flying over Maelstrom Air Force Base. Call it a Chinese spy satellite. I don't know, call it what you want, but you have it flying over supposedly one of our most strategic areas in the country, dude. Why is no one, why did that get swept? Like, why is that just being buffaloed like that? Like, and why I'm asking it is what if our joined realities based upon like one weird thread where if we pull it, it exposes them. I argue that looking at that exposes them completely for what they're doing, which was holding the world hostage so that they can go destroy stuff and get building contracts out of it. Right?
I mean, again, I'm still just kind of stuck. Let me
but I mean, seriously though, like, not even like a stuck, like as an intellectual, like what does it look like then?
Well, essentially what's playing out right now. They're still escalating slowly but surely up a ladder. You're just removing the top rung of the ladder.
Right. So that ladder, if it doesn't have a top rung, it keeps going endlessly. Remember, because I go back to right, like I was, and again, I'm like super serious about, because I think that where we are as a world culture is Stockholm syndrome to the abuser. The abuser is the military industrial complex. The military industrial complex gets to have its way. It just sucked $100 billion out of the United States to buy, we don't even know, stuff that doesn't work. How many Leopard tanks they get out of Germany, man? Like 15, 17, some number, like they got some Bradley fighting units. Right. And I ask this question because I go back to Alexander level, dude, right? And you know that, you're like, what it was, Alexander level, dude. If I get it right. Level. Where is it? Level. He was, I believe he was the I don't know how to spell it right. Alexander Level, I'm getting the wrong dude. Was the defense guy of the Russian charge of the nukes in Russia during the fall of the Soviet Union, right? And he came out and said they were missing 200 suitcase tactical nukes. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but where is all of it? Like, again, like, how does Pakistan keep the lid on it?
I mean, you're dealing with a level of secrecy that is above and beyond anything that you can even imagine. And that's the real issue with this whole world. That this whole world is behind a black cloak that nobody can see through. You don't know what's going on behind it. You don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know where the money's being spent, where it's going, or how any of this stuff is operating, or who is using it and what they're using it for. And it's all run by extremely clandestine agencies and people involved with all of this stuff. And this is how it works. One of the biggest frauds ever in regards to government is the idea that the government cannot keep secrets. And this is always thrown around as the government can't keep a secret, the government can't do this, government can't do that. Yes, the government can keep secrets, and it does keep secrets, and it keeps them very well. And when it doesn't keep them very well, you end up with a Julian Assange and a WikiLeaks and the process that organization and him personally have gone through. So yeah, this is the central issue, really. If you want a democracy, these structures, these institutional structures, do not align with democracy. Secretive intelligence agencies, secret military bases, secret military operations, all this stuff. If you're worried about people being conspiracy theorists, stop acting in such a secretive, clandestine way that ultimately leads to you lying to your people, getting caught in lies, and ending up in disastrous situations. So that's what I think is the root problem of all this.
Exactly. So one of the things that I know, because they can't keep a secret, right? Like, that's a given. Like, it's all compartmentalized. You look at the Manhattan Project, you look at what they were doing in Tennessee with their enrichment stuff. They could keep a secret, but what if that's the secret? What I'm getting
I'll show you a
at
headline.
What's that?
Here's the headline I caught the other day, and 2 days ago.
Okay.
So this is, again, an interesting, and we can't see the whole thing because I'm not registering or paying for it.
That's my boy.
But again, this just goes back to the whole point. The military industrial complex builds world-ending systems, never has to face the consequences of them, but the average everyday Joe soldier who's charged with going into these places, like you said, in Montana every single day, has no idea really what they're getting into, other than you're defending the country and you're doing the right thing and go and wave your flag just a little bit harder. Again, are the people that are launching these things ever going to get these sorts of problems? No. But the people that are stuck with the day-to-day, yeah. And that comes back to the document stuff as well, right? If you're the average soldier, you mishandle classified documents, there goes your career, there goes all your benefits. If you're the average political military elite that does this stuff, no problem. You get to go home every night.
Okay, well, all right. So one of the weird things is, I'm trying to look it up. Let me see. Code for nuclear. Code for. I'm gonna get the wrong thing, dude. Computer code for nuclear weapon systems is, let me see. I believe they still use cobalt, dude. Like, if I'm not, code is cobalt. I could, I'm not going to get it because I'm flying off out on the limb here. Oh, the computer here it is, the computer programming language for the nuclear weapon system is COBOL. That's I've typed in there. It's COBOL, COBOL, dude. So the entire nuclear defense system is running off of COBOL, right? COBOL is like an old archaic code system, code language that's been obsolete, that like they don't even have like programmers anymore who really can do COBOL. Like, the whole system's vulnerable. And I guess what I'm getting at was, like, when I grew up, there was the constant refreshing of the budgets for updating the nukes, got to keep the nukes fresh, it was like a whole thing, dude, right? And here we are, dude. There has not been any attention put to that for what, 20 years? Like, in like any sort of congressional, like, public records of what they're doing with the defense money, of like, oh, we need to update all our systems and this and that. It's pretty much this quiet thing. And why I keep pulling at that thread is because I think COBOL, is because I tend to think that, like, i.e. that this idea of the secrecy is legit. But I go, how are they getting away with it at this point? I still don't get how they're getting away with it, and we're following along. Like I say, call their bluff. Like, call their bluff. We're still validating their hoopty military industrial complex. Like the fact that it went down, and I still don't understand how it's so low tech.
But that's an assumption, and that's what they're publicly telling us, that it's so low tech.
Well,
the whole system may be entirely redesigned. But why would you publicize that? Wouldn't you want the enemy to know that, oh, hey, yeah, this still runs on floppy disks?
I guess I'm just coming from it as a person who's against war, right? As a peace activist, as someone who's been battling for peace, who hasn't given into this left, it's good for war like thing, which I think we both agree on is a huge problem. And I go, well, how did the left just give up on that thing? Because the whole hallmark of the peace movement was this annihilation thing, right?
Yeah, but that all died with the end of the Cold War. When the Cold War ended, that all went away. That was no longer the central focus of international politics. It just died. It died a death. There was no superpower conflict. It became concerned with poverty. That became a big thing in the 1990s. Civil wars, famines, all of this sort of stuff. So in terms of I suppose you could say the intellectual space, there was less intellectual space that was dedicated to the nuclear issue. There was still a few pockets of dedicated individuals and groups that were focused on that as a problem, like the people over at the Doomsday Clock. But for the most part, yeah, it became a non-issue. Things do become non-issues, but they're still very much a problem. People don't really, well, I guess they kind of have over the last couple of years, but people aren't really save the tree hippies as much as they were back in the day when that was the big thing, right? What happened to the save the Amazon movement? What happened to the end world poverty movement? All of this stuff, unfortunately, comes and goes. The problems still exist, but the human attention span is always diverted onto the next issue, whatever the next issue may be. And I think something that actually legitimizes why the nuclear issue is a real problem is the fact that the leaders of the Western world are trying to downplay this as much as possible. They are actually the ones almost trying to make you believe that there are no nukes and we can do no wrong and we can keep funneling in as many weapons as we want, as many tanks as we want. Nothing's going to go wrong. Trust us. Well, we trusted you in Afghanistan. We trusted you in Iraq. Disaster. And then again, I only really focus on those two wars because they're most recent, still in people's memories. You can keep throwing stuff into this conflict, but there needs to be some clearly defined objective, which there currently is not. And as long as that's the case, and this fighting just goes on and on and on, yeah, the risk of escalation is still there.
Okay, so, on that thing, right? Because so if what I think's one of the interesting, forget about the whole nukes thing for a while, like on that, like I just think it's a thread to pull on. Just saying, man, what would it look like?
On that level, I'll tell you one thing that might be possible. It might be possible that these massive numbers, right? We have five. I don't know what the number is that they claim right now. I think it's something like 5,000, something like that. Well, whatever it is. Let's say they claim the US currently has 5,000 nuclear missiles. It's possible that only a very, very tiny percentage of them are operational anymore.
I agree on
absolutely possible. That is absolutely possible. And then, well, where are the ones that are operational?
So what and the reason
I would put them in submarines if I had to put them anyway.
I know, and I got you. And the reason that I keep sticking on the thing is and we'll pull away from it is because you brought up something interesting with like at one level, like why do you assume that that this is like not a plan? Like when you said they keep sending what they don't seem to have an objective. Why would what makes you believe they don't have an objective set before them?
Oh no. So I agree with what you're alluding to there, right? Their objective may be just drag this thing on for the next 20 years. That's the problem. So we need a real objective, is what I'm saying. We need to know, well, what does victory actually mean? Does victory mean Russia is ejected from all of Ukraine? Does it mean Crimea becomes part of Ukraine again? What does victory mean? Because unless you have that defined, the fight's going to go on and on and on and on forever. And victory can never be accomplished because we don't know what victory means. And no one's offering us a vision of what.
Well, I think didn't Ursula get up there and make a pretty solid statement in the last like 3 days? Like Ursula seems to be signaling that the money's run out for the conflict, that it's time to like switch gears. And the reason and the reason I dig into this, because I find it fascinating, because I'm surprised at this point. I am surprised that it has. I'm not, but I am that it has taken this direction. You know, if we go back to when we first talked about this through the thing, like it was pretty like, whoa, man, like, and now it's just staled out into this meat grinder thing. And you can, if you go by some of these, like there's a certain contingent of these Scott Ritters and McGregors that are like, Ukraine's already lost the war. It's just a matter of sticking the flag in it. That Europe wants to get out of this thing because Ukraine can't do it. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the manufacturing. They're depending upon outside resources to do their whole thing, which gets real tricky with the NATO barriers and boundaries in Russia and the whole thing. And I go and why I keep going. They have been saying now these, I don't, what do you want, like Ukraine defeat hawks, if you will. I don't know how else to describe them. That Ukraine's lost, that we're getting smoke screened, which is what this other side of the media says, that like, look, we're getting lied to, that Ukraine's losing and they've lost, and it's basically just a facade right now. We're getting manipulated by Western media. Probably, maybe. I don't know, but what they keep saying, and I pull up on these little things, is they've said that there's amassing, there's roughly like 500,000 Russian troops there ready to go, and they're waiting for the frozen ground, right? They're waiting for the frozen ground to do this thing, and they're gonna, and I've been hearing that now for 3 months. Like, oh, when it gets frozen, they're gonna make their move.
Oh, well, then it gets to the spring offensive.
Well, the spring offensive, but the big thing, I mean, both sides, even the left, even the Western propaganda would say that the big danger is coming when the ground freezes, right? And so when the ground freezes, things are going to happen. Nothing's happened. You have a demoralized Ukrainian army dug in, holding its line. Who knows what's really going on? A lot of Polish conscripts. I mean, there's reports coming out of Poland about what's going on there with the dead soldiers and the migrant invasion and all that kind of stuff. So I just don't see this movement that I'm wondering on both sides. There does seem to be a very interesting, and I think we nailed it earlier on, is it's the burn off of all this old hardware. So everybody can retool and reinvest in new hardware and new concrete blocks and new housing blocks. And I mean, maybe it's just as dumb as that. It's just a bad real estate scam. I mean, it takes the fun out of the conversation, but you know what I mean? Maybe it's just
definitely some of the nations that have funneled weapons into Ukraine have already come out and said that, well, we need to replenish our stocks now. I saw Norway was making that announcement last week sometime. Well, we've sent all this crap to Ukraine. Time for us to get all the new gear.
and that's what leads me to this interest. Like, why was there the need? Wouldn't it be more beneficial to just send the money straight to Raytheon? And
this gives those companies a good justification for why they exist. So it's like you say, well, yeah, you could just write them a check, but it's easier to write them a check if something bad is actually happening.
That's my point. Like that, like when I think about it, isn't that what this is really like about on a certain level, is getting everybody, like when I saw America buy into another war because it was fashionable this time around, right? Sean Penn and woohoo and the whole thing of freedom fighters, everybody needs to and they had all the attractive Ukrainian politicians in her thing with I'm armed and we're going to stop them. And, the brewery was making Molotov cocktails and all that kind of hipsterness of it. And here we are on the backside of it all. How did anyone get hoodwinked into signing up for this on any level? Because and I know, if that it was all a hustle from the Minsk Accords. I mean, they've come out and admitted as much, that it was all a scam to rearm and retool and endless war, and so I don't see how they're pulling the wool over anyone's eyes, except for this existential threat of this nuclear Armageddon thing. And that's why I keep going back to it, is what do we buy into the need to defend Ukraine the way we did without nuclear Armageddon? Do we need to go into Afghanistan without this threat of annihilation, and they're going to set up a Taliban base and it's all going to switch? Remember yellow cake uranium? That was the premise behind going into Iraq, was once again weapons of mass destruction. And it seems to be that's the gambit, because it's a very esoteric thing. And meanwhile, we don't seem to be that worried about like biolabs around the planet that are leaky. I mean, that whole thing about how many of these biolabs were in Ukraine was everyone just swept that under the carpet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only reason I pull on that string a little bit, is because what if we are completely invested in this idea that we need war to wage peace, which seems to be the premise of the left now. We need war to wage peace. And what is that war for? It's this existential threat of nuclear Armageddon is their only reasoning behind it. And it seems to be a pretty good narrative.
I don't see how that doesn't help them go to war, though, right? That should help. That should help us. That argument should actually help the people that are against it.
Well, the way it's been framed is there's a madman in this country over there who has the next biggest stockpile of these weapons, and he's hanging them over our head, which is absolutely false. I mean, when we were talking about this before, prior to the whole 2020 debacle of science gone mad, I mean, you had a country that was said they wanted to be the largest exporter of organic crops on the planet. You had a country that said they wanted to promote the family. They wanted to go back to Christian ideals. Everything a wokester is against in a weird way. And so you go back to the original Hillary Clinton stuff with, we're coming to get him. And I just wonder how far down this road we are without a destination. And the destination was, we're going to go, that dude, he's a bad dude. And the entire academic world is behind it. And I don't hear anyone asking that one question. And I don't know why, because I think it's a valid question at this point, 70 years later, is just to like no one on the planet has gotten stupid for a minute. One lunatic.
Well, it hasn't been that long, really, in the grand scheme of things.
My entire life.
Yeah.
My entire life. I guess that's the thing is I was a young thinking, articulate human being before the fall of the Soviet Union. I remember all this stuff. This is just a rehash of that whole plot line. But it's not, but the interesting thing is that one actually made some sort of sense when you looked at the militarized tentacles of it and the whole Soviet thing and the bluff, right? We put the Soviets out of business. They couldn't keep up. They were making fake, Potemkin villages of armies. I mean, let's not forget the Soviets are the Potemkin village, right? So I wonder if we're not being Potemkin villaged on a very interesting way, because at this point, I think there's enough bad players in the thing to wonder how those bad players are staying in line. And what I mean by that is Pakistan's got no vested interest in not taking on India.
I don't know. Millions of dead might be a pretty big vested interest.
But you're talking about an interesting place as we think about this sort of conflict in the terms of us. But I see enough opposing groups that have this capability that don't seem to be playing that ball either, and they have less of a reason to hang on than we do with our fancy Teslas and Elon Musk electric vehicles. Sorry, but you get what I'm saying is and the reason I'm fascinated is how do we stop this insanity? Because I don't want the fact that there are piles of people stacked up is insanity to me in the modern world. I don't quite understand it, except that we just went through 3 years of mass world psychosis with a unified World Health Organization unifying every country around the world on a doctrine that has now been proven to be totally bogus. Right? They just did it to the entire world. That's kind of where I pull it on it a little bit is if I'd been this serious about this in 2019, I would be like, man, it's a little bit, but we just went through 3 years of them doing that, right? They came up with something. They showed us a picture of a ball with spikes on it. They said, it's gonna get you. Everybody do this. We're shutting down the world. Like, it didn't matter what country you were from, the entire air grid got shut down. So how did you get people that are adamantly opposed to the West to sign up for that too? Right? They're all interconnected on the top, right? Like, that's what I mean is are we sure we're not getting played here? I smell a rat in the stew.
Self-preservation is a very powerful instinct.
Whose self-preservation?
Well, your own, and there's the whole logic of mutually assured destruction is premised on self-preservation. That
But what
well,
if
we
that?
won't.
But that's what I'm arguing is what if that's not preserving ourselves? What if the concept of mutually assured destruction is actually ensuring destruction of large groups of people in a localized area? Like we've sacrificed, we of the West, we as modern human beings have said that it is okay to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of people to prevent this mutually assured destruction. We've greenlighted, we have said that that is worth it. It is worth it for this to happen. And I don't mean you and me, I mean societally. And I wonder, I go, is the only way that you get this done, this concept of mutually assured destruction, the boogeyman in the corner is coming, it's going to get you. And we're willing to sacrifice these people. Because I would argue that some of these people sitting over there would be like, no, this doesn't make any sense. And that's all I'm arguing is it doesn't make any sense. From a real strategic point of view.
I think that's probably a good conclusion for a lot of our current political problems, unfortunately. Doesn't really make sense.
But it does on a certain level if they're running a con. Like they don't seem worried about it, do they? Like the think tanks aren't worried about it. Who's worried about it? You're more deeper in it on that level. Like who's actually worried about this mutually assured destruction?
Yeah,
like,
not enough people, and that's a problem. And that's a problem. So when you look at it, I think you need to say, well, who doesn't think this is a problem? Military industrial complex doesn't think this is a problem. They don't want you to think it's a problem. They want you to keep supporting. Well, we can just keep throwing in more tanks, keep throwing in more missiles. Nothing's going to go wrong. Trust us.
But what does bluff? See, that's what I mean is that the flip side of that is they're bluffing us into that there isn't a problem. And I'm just going, that doesn't make any sense either. If my point of view doesn't make any sense that this mutually assured destruction thing's a myth, the convex of it doesn't really make that much sense either. That they're bluffing that it's not going to happen, even though they know it could happen. You get what I'm saying? It like. That's what I mean by who do you see actually behaving as if that's a possibility?
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's a really big problem. This is what sent Robert McNamara crazy, screaming at people in the Pentagon. He goes over there to the Pentagon and he's literally screaming at people. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why have you just tested? What did they do during the Cuban Missile Crisis? They test fired something or they test launched something, and he goes apoplectic because they didn't understand the potential consequences for escalation. So yeah, not enough people do understand this, and that's a problem. Not enough people think that it's real, and that's a problem, because the more of those people there are, the more risks that will be taken, and there's definitely a degree of moral hazard here as well, because again, the people making these decisions, they're going to be in Cheyenne Mountain when all of this kicks off, and you will be evaporated if you're lucky.
Dead planet for everybody, man. Like that whole like we're gonna hide in the mountain thing. That's not gonna work for them either. I guess what I'm saying is you have two dudes right here who are like, this is an untenable situation for humanity. I argue that 500,000 is too many. You're saying that 7 billion is too many. We both agree that whatever's going on is diametrically opposed to the human abundance and the human propagation of prosperity and love and kindness and decency and raising children and the basic reality that we should be promoting as a species of human beings, right? And what I'm getting at is both of our points of view are based upon people lying one way or the other. So we can agree on that the power brokers are lying. Forget my angle or your, like, we can agree that they are 100% lying for their own means. Yeah? No?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and this is why I've, as a guy who thinks about this stuff, I go, well, one lie, you can lie because you know the cards and you're like, we don't lose, we're the house, we control the board. The other lie says, we're bluffing, we're not the house, we don't control the board, but we can run out of the casino at any time, basically. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, who's the house at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
I think this is it's a symptom that we have a completely inept, mostly corrupt leadership class in the Western world. We have people that are appointed to positions. For example, if you want to be an ambassador of the United States to any country in particular, just make a campaign donation to a president. And you'll be appointed ambassador to wherever. Could be a really important foreign country. You'll be appointed ambassador simply on the basis of you writing a check to a president's campaign. The United States does not and has not really ever had a professional diplomatic class of people. It's entirely politicized. We have a government that's run not of, by, and for the people, but of, by, and for who's writing the checks. So yeah, this is what happens. You get a leadership that's completely inept, has no grasp of reality, has no capability of dealing with tremendously dangerous situations, and puts us in really dangerous situations on an almost daily basis because of it. So we have, and in terms of where you want to put the blame for that, I don't know. The idea that just voting for these parties over and over again, the first point I made on this video, is going to solve it, is wrong. But yeah, we have a completely incompetent, inept class of leaders on this level.
And that's what got my whole string pulling, is the utter incompetence and ineptitude. We're talking about idiocracy in this level. So what's the buffer on idiocracy? If the end result of idiocracy is annihilation,
maybe that's the irony of it all.
Well, no, but what I'm getting at is how, what are they always like, what are the guardrails for idiocracy? Well, so what are the guardrails? And that's the house. On the argument you're making is that's the guardrails, is that you can send this idiotic diplomatic class all over the world, doesn't have negotiating skills, doesn't understand cultural stuff, just gets a political appointment and runs amok, right? Well, what's the guardrail for some idiot just starting this off because he's an idiot and he's got nothing, he's got a bad hair day, his loafers are too tight. Like that's what I'm saying is what's preventing that then?
Yes, you mean as a solution?
No, not as a solution, but as a practicality in real time. If the
I get what you mean.
If the
Yeah,
morons are running the show like that, like the German in military woman, military, whatever, the in charge of the military over there. She basically came out and said, we're basically at war with Russia, right?
mhm.
That suddenly, according to the narrative, right, it was just strictly a defensive because of the people down in eastern Ukraine. We're backing them up, but we're doing this because we want to buffer on NATO. We're not going to allow Ukraine to join NATO. This is a NATO thing, right? The minute that Germany says this and starts to do this, it suddenly activates what is the red line for Russia, right? Which is supposedly like this is the existential threat we've been warning about for a long time, man. And we don't like it. And you have this idiot running her mouth saying stupid stuff. You got a lot of idiots running their mouth saying stupid stuff. So you're telling me that the guys over on the Russian side are cool enough to be like, it's just an idiot running their mouth. We're not going to do anything about it. They're bluffing, but yet they've sat back now since the Minsk Accord and got duped once. They got played heavily with the Minsk Accord, with the whole thing, and they got played. They got bought time to build up the whole thing and shuffle all the chess pieces around. So you're telling, and this could be idiocracy too, but the people over in Russia are sitting there going, nah, they're just idiots. We're not going to do, it's not a threat. It's just some lame person running their.
Well, we don't know that they are doing that, though. We don't know that that is their response. They could be figuring out ways of doubling down, escalating the conflict, doing something in Ukraine, outside of Ukraine. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You wake up, you don't know what the next headline is going to be.
Or they don't care because they're not worried about it either.
Mm-hmm.
Just something about it. Just if this was going on in the mountains of, I mean, let's not forget supposedly the strongest military in the world got smoked in the mountains of Afghanistan. Four superpowers have been smoked in the mountains of Afghanistan, right? Like, well, you got Alexander the Great, you've got the Russians, the British, were the British up in there? Yeah, the British got smoked up in there. You got the United States. Smoked, couldn't do a thing. You look at the thing, the United States got smoked, gets smoked everywhere. We get smoked everywhere. The Russians get smoked everywhere. So again, as I just wonder, why are we putting up with this? And I know you're asking the same question too. Like, why are you even? We're asking for two different reasons coming from the same point of view. Doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. Mm-hmm. And the end result. And I go, the only way they're getting away with it is fear of the unknown. And you're going, the way they're getting rid of it is idiots. Which I kind of think is the same thing in a weird way. Mm-hmm. Like, you get what I'm saying? Is I mean, have you read that book, The Devil in the Garden of Eden by Eric Larson?
No.
It goes to your thing. It's all about the political appointment of the ambassador to Nazi Germany in the early part of the rise of the Nazis. And it's a fascinating book about this diplomat over there and what was going on. I just recommending it. But I think your premise right there is an interesting thread to pull on with all of these things. Is something doesn't quite line up if we're talking about people that are actually spending their time thinking about stuff. Because I can't buy into the premise that these people are just like acting like that. I think they know what they're doing. I really do, at the end of the day, think that these people know exactly what's on the chessboard. They're making decisions based upon the chessboard. And and my lens into it is that we got Stockholm syndrome. And I wonder what we would look like as people on the outside trying to deconstruct their thing, to remove one of their mythical chessboards. I mean, it was sort of that thing when I heard something pretty interesting. Ritter was, or McGregor, one of those dudes, was the number of tanks getting sent, the Panzers or Leopards or whatever they are from Germany, right, would essentially make up a kilometer of front. That number of tanks, so 15, whatever it was, makes up such a small portion of the front line. And his argument was that kind of equipment dropped into the theater of battle for an untrained military actually does them more harm than good, because they don't and it was basically the thing of, that behind every tank is this repair line of logistics, of extra parts and factories making these parts so that these things break down. Is when you look into tanks, they're not very durable platforms over the long haul. They do puffs and then things break, or a bearing goes out and now your tank needs to be put on a flatbed truck and driven back to a warehouse where there's a mechanic that knows how to deal. But these are modern equipment with computers and all this gear. And he was arguing that these pieces of equipment only work with an army that's equipped and trained on this equipment. And it's not the dude driving the tank or firing the shell. It's all the people in the rear that fix this stuff. And I was like, whoa, dude, that's a trippy way to look at it. Is we tend to think of war as weapons. But if you really look at war, it's always been the supply chain of repair. It used to be back when the armies would march, it was the food. You look at the Civil War, for every Civil War soldier, there was 10 others bringing up food and all this. And that's why those generals, you read about Sherman and Stonewall and all these guys, they were always concerned about how far they were getting away from their supply chain. And when Sherman does his move, that's how Sherman wins the Civil War. Is he's like, we're breaking from the supply chain and we're foraging off the land, which is his march to the sea, 100 miles wide, where they just ate their way and fed on the fly, right? That's how he pulls it off. And so you look at this thing now where you go, okay, how are these people going to deal with this equipment that's, again, is it doesn't seem to be a realistic number of equipment. If they had come and if Germany had said, hey, look, we're dumping 1,000 tanks in there, I go, oh, whoa, dude, that's pretty serious. But like 15, I chuckle at it. Even if they said 75, I'd be like, what? What's the right? I'm not crazy about that number. I even feel stupid saying that number, but it is that low, correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
And so and I also heard this thing, right? Like Zelensky's asking for F-15s and stuff. And again, these guys, they're warhawks on the other side, was arguing that you can't have Ukrainian pilots that are trained in MiGs learn to fly American hardware, F-15s, because it's a totally different system. It's not like Firefox where Clint Eastwood gets in and can speak the Russian and it chips in. These are totally different weapons platforms. And I don't think people are thinking enough like that. How are they? It does seem like defeat.
Always the option for American pilots who are not American pilots.
Well, that is a point, but I think that the minute the caskets really start rolling in, dude, people will trip out. I mean, the fact that it's crazy. There's no anti-war thing going on this planet, but I don't know, Stuart. My whole thing for fun, and it's just to explore that thought of what if, when you analyze it, what if that one chess piece is removed? And what does that make the battlefield look like? Because you're an analyst of this stuff. I'm just a dude that plays games in my head with information. Like, what would it look like? Like, really, like maybe, and then maybe I don't know, but I think that like their bluff unfolds a little bit, because I think there's enough evidence at this point to question this mutually assured destruction. Trust me, I was a dude who saw Threads when I was a kid. The scariest movie you'll ever watch. You ever seen Threads?
I don't think so.
Dude, you've never watched Threads?
No, I don't think so.
You're English.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't watched one of the scariest movie this planet's ever made out of your own country?
I'm gonna note it down though.
Go watch Threads. Get yourself really scared, dude, of what it looks like. Because Threads is what happens when it goes down, and it's gritty, only the way a low budget English movie could be. And you have to remember that movie, if you choose to think, was aired at the same time the day before, the day of, and the day after was aired, which was prime time American fodder when I was a teenage, like on the TV for 3 nights in a row. It was the day before, the day of, and the day after, dude. And it was like the whole nuclear Armageddon thing. I mean, this was on public television, like when there was 3 networks, like it was terrifying. And so and Threads was the British answer to that. And when you watch Threads, it's hectic, dude. It really is, because they do it in a very America tends to be glossy and like plotline.
Mm-hmm.
This is very much gritty, and the plot line is just following this one girl from start to finish. And it's like, whoa. I won't spoil it for you, but remember they were pumping that into my generation. So I already got terrified. That's what I mean on the convex for a guy like me is I've already passed that point of no return when I was young. They ain't got nothing on me now. Anyway, Stuart, I love you, brother. I'm always ready to see your puzzled face when I bring it up, because it is like, I got it. It's like a what, but what if? Because I could be. I'm betting my life that I'm right. Like, that's the difference. I'm putting my life on the line on that. But I'm on the same page as you are, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're having this conversation because we are 2 dudes that are anti-war and we want to save lives, dude, at the end of the day. And I madly respect you for that, Stuart. I really do.
That's the goal.
All right, my brother.
Always good to talk to you, Hamish.
Okay, man. Let's hope we don't have a real 1-year anniversary here on the 22nd, man.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Doc, take it easy, Stuart.
Yeah, we'll catch you soon.